So something I see when I go riding with other riders, and especially new riders, is that their bikes are very dirty. My personal feeling is that a clean bike is a happy bike. So I want to do a quick bike wash video for you guys today, super informal. So I use a variety of tools to wash the bike. I have a brush, I have a general sponge, I use a large sponge that's got sort of the black Brillo-y stuff on the back, and then I use a small sponge that's got the blue Brillo-y stuff on the back also. So it's sort of a scrubby surface. So we grab our warm soapy water, and I've already sprayed the bike. And the first thing I do is I give it an initial pass with the big general sponge. So I hit the top tube. Make sure you hit the underside because a lot of sweat tends to accumulate there. Don't be afraid of using lots of suds. I'll do the stem. Lots of sweat tends to accumulate there. Do the handlebars. I want to keep these white hoods looking nice, so I'll do those guys. So we spend a couple minutes doing the frame in a very general sense. Okay, head tube, spend a minute or two on the front brake. But we're going to come back to all of this stuff in more detail. If you have a stand, a bike stand goes a long way towards making this an easier task. I don't have a stand, but I don't mind doing it this way. I've been doing it for years. So I've got a system that works for me. And over time, what you'll find is you develop your own system also. So I've given it just a quick once over with the general sponge. Okay? Now what I'll do is I'll shift to the big ring and I'll take it halfway up the cassette in the back. Maybe one or two more. And then what I'll do is take my big blue sponge, the Brillo-y sponge, and I'll give the chain a once over. Whoops. I need for that to happen. So an easier way to do it is to lean the bike up against something, and then you can run the chain through. So I've done that a couple times. Then what I'll do is pop the wheels out. And this is where we get down to the detail work. So I'll set the wheels off to the side for a moment. Now, with my brush, I'm going to tackle the chain rings, okay? My firm belief is that you should be able to eat off the drivetrain on your bike. Sometimes I'll spray the chain rings with simple green or citrus solve or something like that. Just to try and get in front of some of that grease that this stuff can accumulate. So I'll do it on the front, and then on the back what I do is run it through like this, go in both directions. And that gives the brush a chance to go forward and backward. You can see the bristles move back and forth. Then I'll take my blue sponge because I don't want to get grease on my general sponge, and I'll do the spots that tend to accumulate grease. So in the chain stays, the back of the derailleur, and I'll use the Brillo-y part on the back of the derailleur. And then up inside the wishbone here, okay, we want to try and get as much as we can. A little bit of love on the dropouts. And then on the front, because we don't have quite as much grease up there, I'll get out the general sponge again and do inside the forks, inside that front brake, and behind the front brake on the fork blades. Good. So done with the frame for a minute. Set that guy over here. Grab my front wheel, and I'll go back to my big blue Brillo-y sponge, and I'll go once around, okay, maybe twice, around the rim and the tire. And by using a big sponge, you can grab the rim and the tire. And then hit the outside of the the hubs. And then I'll do each spoke individually. Because somehow or another, even if you keep your bike pretty clean, the spokes always tend to accumulate grease and grit. I don't know how. Then with my little sponge, little guy, I'm going to reach inside the spokes and do each side of the hub. So it takes a few rotations. Good. So that's the front wheel. Then with the back wheel, I go back to my brush, and I'm going to brush the freewheel. And I'm going to do it in two directions, just to try and get as much of it as we can. And then I go back to the blue Brillo sponge to go around the rim. And sometimes multiple passes. It depends probably on what kind of time you have. Outside of the hub on the non-drive side, and then I hit each spoke. Same thing on the other side, but you know, I'm stuck outside the freewheel. Fortunately though, I had the cassette off the other day to make a repair. And then I take my small sponge and I go inside the hub and get the hub itself, the hub body. So, then we put the wheels back on. And over time what you'll find is you get to be pretty practiced with this stuff. So it looks like I'm bungling it, going slow. But that's just so I get to all the details. That doesn't fit in there. I don't know what I did, but it's too tight. Go to the front wheel. It's a good thing I'm not a team mechanic, huh? These would be slow wheel changes. Remount the chain. And then we're going to hose the whole thing down. So we don't want to use the spray with too much pressure because we can potentially drive grit into the bearings. So I use a shower and a very light shower, and then we hose the whole thing down. Don't forget your handlebars, the underside. Front brake, you want to get in there around the tire because you soaked the tire and the spokes So you do each tube, and remember that we put suds in the chain, so we want to rinse the chain. And then what we do on one side, we want to do on the other. Get inside that cassette. So we put lots of suds in the cassette and the freewheel, and then the spokes, and so on. So that's a short video on bike washing. Some people choose to take more time. Some people have quite a few more brushes, different shape brushes. But this is how I do it. I've been doing it for years. Now what I'll do is I'll let the whole thing air dry for a while. Then I'll wipe the chain with a clean, dry rag, get it a little more dry. I'll put some Teflon lube on the chain, run that through a bunch of times, let that dry, and then wipe the extra. And then I'll go back for some of the pivot points on the derailleur with some spray lube. But clean bike's a happy bike. If you have any questions, you can contact me, GeminiTrainingSystems.com.